I feel like our show may have predetermined the Liverpool-Napoli result. Sorry, Liverpool fans. We owe you one. But man, we said this, Liam. And again, I'm going to give us some credit because we said this when we did our Champions League show, when we found out about the groups and what teams were in each group. We said put a little asterisk beside Napoli because this is a team in Serie A that is battling for Scudetto for the first time since Maradona and that has some firepower. And you mentioned on yesterday's show, Kvaratskhelia on Napoli, which I hope I pronounced that correctly. You could see Thierry Henry in one of the post-game shows. He was like, this is a hard name to pronounce. But man, that guy's good, and a couple other really good players.
They have a really good attack, and that's like when we did our Champions League preview, I was like, I think this team could really make some noise. And the first game, like right out the gate too, 45 seconds, just absolutely exposing Liverpool, and then just continue to do it over and over and over again. And I think that's what makes them so scary is the players they have going forward. And, you know, I think when you play the toughest team in the group right off the bat, like Liverpool, and then you get a win like that, it sends such a huge message to everybody in your group. And, like, this is the only way is up for Napoli, I think. On Liverpool, on the other hand. Well, I guess the only way is up because they can't really get any lower at this
Honestly,
point.
I just feel like each game somehow is worse and worse. But quickly about Napoli, you mentioned the first 45 seconds of the game. Osman was just, he hit that post. It's so unlucky. They came out, like the word I felt like when I was watching, I was like, this is a powerful team because they're not afraid that they're taking on Liverpool. They almost established the fear in Liverpool off of the get. And I really respected that. And Osman, like that's a guy that I spoke to on yesterday's show, Rafael Leao on AC Milan. I feel like Osman's going to be one of those guys too that we are going to be talking about way more in the next few years. Just his ability, how he ran off the ball, how he stripped the back line of the ball, how he, was selfless with the ball. You could see him in a position where, he could have easily shot the ball. And I believe he ended up passing it to Kvaratskhelia instead of shooting it. I just think that this is a really star quality kind of player and just on a very, very intimidating Napoli team.
Yeah, it's funny because Napoli was supposed to be one of the top teams in Serie A that was kind of in a transition, and they've really just turned it around so quickly. I think the scary thing for this game was this easily could have been like a 7-1 game.
Right.
Like that chance right at the start they missed.
The PK.
The penalty was missed. And there was a couple other chances too in the game. It's like, this could have really got out of hand quickly. And it did. Like it was 3-0 at halftime to Napoli. But if this had ended 7-1, yes, obviously we would have all been like, wow, that's crazy. But if you actually watched the game, you'd be like, that was probably deserving of what both teams were putting out on the field.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this as an AC Milan fan, but I'm like rooting for Napoli. One, because they have Zielinski, which is a Polish guy. He scored the first penalty, perfectly placed. I'd love to see him have some success, especially around the time of obviously him going into a World Cup squad with Poland. So I have some bias there, but I just, aside from how swaggy Napoli's kits are, because I'm like, why can't AC Milan have a light blue kit top to bottom? I just think that they're a team that goes far. And everyone, it's one of those teams where you're like, who the hell had Napoli in their quarter or semifinal? But I just think that I don't want to put too much emphasis on how well they can do after one game and obviously a very poor Liverpool performance. But I do think we have to pay respect to what Napoli did to make that happen.
Yeah, and like you said, like this is a group they can get out of, I think, rather not easily, but they're one of the two best teams, if not the best right now. And there's just feels like they're going to be that team, doesn't it? Where they just kind of not cruise through, but they're able to advance quite deeply into the competition, a bit like Villarreal in a way last season, but there's more quality on this Napoli team, and they're exciting. I love watching them every week, and I'm excited. Like next up in the Champions League, they have Rangers at Rangers, where Rangers didn't put together a very good performance yesterday against Ajax, but being at Ibrox, I think this will be a really, really fun game.
One thing I want to point out, what the hell was Milner thinking with that handball?
He is having a tough time right now. A lot of people were very upset that he even started the game yesterday, and then within the first, 3 or 4 minutes, he gives up the penalty, and I'll admit, I felt a little bit bad for him because I was like, oh man, like you had an opportunity just to kind of like, no one's expecting anything crazy from Milner anymore, but have a quiet game. And then in the first 4 minutes, just handball. It's like, oh, that literally could have been a worse start.
There's handballs, and then there's Milner's handball. Like, there's a handball where it unintentionally hits your arm, and I hate those because I'm like, what's someone supposed to do? They can't control that. And then there's a full-on arm extension in the box in the first few minutes of a game. Like, he mentally had to have not been present in that moment because it was just, I watched that. I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it was a bit of a brain fart moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, he's rubbed me the wrong way since he's yelled at Van Dijk. So, and that's no disrespect to Milner. He's such a hard-working player, but I think since that moment with Van Dijk, I'm like, there's a lot more problems in Liverpool than I think we even know of.
I think with Milner, he's just at the end of the road.
Yeah.
He's had a great career. Like, I remember when he came on, he started in the Premier League at 16 for Leeds. Believe at the time he was the youngest player to ever play in the Premier League, and now what is he, 36, something like that? And
Yeah.
you know what? It's time to take a back seat. And I know Liverpool have had their injury problems and all that kind of stuff, but I think now that Thiago's coming back and Keita's probably going to be back pretty soon too, he's like, Milner's going to fall down the depth chart, and it's unfortunate to kind of see him just dwindle away after what he's done. But if I was a Liverpool fan, I'd be pretty happy not to see him again, to be honest.
My goodness, Van Dijk. I think Virgil van Dijk's having a hard time. I know he's having a hard time this season. That penalty that was called for his challenge, which I believe was, the one that Osman missed, which thank his lucky stars that they didn't score. Do you agree with that call?
When I watched it live, I didn't think anything of it, but after watching the replay, I think it was a penalty.
Yeah.
And I know the commentator was saying, it's like, well, was the ball gone? It's like, well, you're kind of assuming in both ways, or like, would he have got it? Would he not have got it? But the thing that we do know is that Osman's foot was stepped on by Van Dijk, which prevented him from getting to the ball. So I think that's what the referee has to go off rather than an assumption. Yes, I think it was a penalty. I think it was a bit unfortunate as well because
I agree.
Osman's foot kind of came underneath Van Dijk. He wasn't really doing anything to put himself in that position. But yeah, I would say it was a penalty. And luckily for him, there was no damage until the other 3 goals went in.
I actually completely agree with you. And you guys know me. I'm usually on the fence of wanting the refs to let players play and whatever. I agreed with this call. One, because things like that, if they happen outside of the box, maybe let it go. It happens, whatever. But since it's inside the box, you can't let that go. And I do agree with you. I don't think it was intentional by Van Dijk at all. I think it was very unlucky. But as a defender, and I'm sure he knows, any player, when you're going into, your defensive third, you have to be aware of your footing, where the ball is, where the player is, whether the player is going to sell it or not. These are all things that it's kind of that emotional part of the game and tactical part of the game. And I think they made the right call, and Liverpool was lucky they didn't have another goal against.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know what else Van Dijk could have done. Like you said, it was just kind of an unfortunate thing, but he wasn't even the worst defender on Liverpool that day, like honestly, after the game,
Gomez.
Joe Gomez. I said the other week, like they were talking about him maybe getting in the England squad, and he shouldn't even, like I said then, is that he shouldn't be in the conversation. He shouldn't even be anywhere close to being on a shirt ever again, to be honest. But just Liverpool, like Klopp said after the game, that this team needs to reinvent themselves, and Liverpool have been known to be like this high line defending team, and right now, it's just not working, and that's how a lot of the goals came from Napoli yesterday, was on the counter-attack, like getting the ball over the top and using speed to get through. And, we all know Trent Alexander-Arnold can't defend very well.
To say it very nicely.
To say it nicely. And that's the reason, honestly, like he's not in the England squad all the time, is because of stuff like that. He's probably the best right back going forward in the world.
I agree with that statement
but
hard.
Defending... If you're a defender, you need to know how to defend. Like that's why Reece James is ahead of him. That's why Kieran Trippier still gets in the team, and Kyle Walker. And now you've seen it for Liverpool a little bit more too. I do think things will get better when Matip comes back, because I think he probably is the best centre back at Liverpool. Like, Van Dijk's just not what he was. He's still great. Matip, we did see him come back, like I said. I think he came on at halftime for Gomez, actually, and that'll make a difference for them. It's just about injuries coming back.
Yeah.
You know, Thiago played, took off James Milner, played actually not bad in the limited time he played. He played like the last half an hour, and it's easy to judge Liverpool so harshly right now, and we definitely both have, and I think it's justified with what they've done on the field.
Yeah.
But now the injuries are coming back. Let's see what this team can do now with two key players back in the team. And if it continues this way, then we'll have another conversation. But also Mo Salah. He's not been the star that it's expected. Like, goals are expected to come from him, and he hasn't showed up. Liverpool beat a team 9-0 earlier, like a couple of weeks ago, right? And he wasn't involved in any goals. And it's like, where are you right now?
Well, Mo Salah has 5 goals from open play in 27 games. And this is why I spoke to Sadio Mane after that Liverpool United game. And I said, I don't think Liverpool realized how much of a loss it's going to be for their team to not have Sadio Mane. And I think we're kind of really seeing that happen right now. And I understand the injury conversation around Liverpool, but at some point, you know, you have to realize that they still have very good players on the pitch that are just not doing their job. I said a couple shows ago, the back line and the midfield line scares me. And what are they going to look like when they take on a team that's really good? And we saw what happened against a very good Napoli performance. I just don't know if you can chalk it up to injuries anymore. I don't think it's the end of the world with Liverpool. I think that they could, if they do find a way to really quickly reinvent themselves like Klopp wants them to do, maybe they do have a bounce back just like we've seen United kind of have. But I don't know how confident I am in this team right now because they just look messy, and it's unfortunate for Liverpool fans. Again, the nice ones out there, I'm sorry that this is happening because you guys just went from an unbelievable season to a shitstorm, to say the least. But I think that there's just a lot of excuses, and maybe I'm not in the squad, but maybe a lot of excuses and not enough accountability.
I think another big thing for this team is the depth they have. There's nobody, like, you look at Manchester City and it's like, okay, if Jack Grealish isn't performing, Mahrez is pushing him, and there's all over the field. They basically have 2 starting 11s, and Liverpool just don't have that. And I think it's showing in a way that it doesn't matter how poorly Mo Salah performs. It doesn't matter how poorly Trent Alexander-Arnold performs. Like, they have to be in the team every week because there's no one else of pure quality that can come in and replace them. And that's an issue that Liverpool now have to deal with Mane gone. And I think this is something that's finally catching up to them. The injuries, of course, have played a big factor, and now that even involves the depth. And I don't know how they're going to finish top 2 this season. Like, I just don't see it. I think there's a lot to go on about in the Premier League right now. Like, there's a lot of question marks with all these teams, and City's one of them. It's funny, we talk about City every week and how good they are, and they've drawn 2 games, and they've been pushed in a lot. And we're not even questioning the ability of this team because we just know the quality they have. And Chelsea now firing Thomas Tuchel shows what's going on there. Like, Tottenham are a bit of a weird team. United seems to be on the rise and they've had big wins. And then you get Liverpool, and they just seem to be in that mix too. In the last couple of years, we've just known them as City and Liverpool, and now it just feels like City. Which
I'm kind of here for it because, and that's no disrespect to Liverpool. I would say that if it was any other team but Liverpool. I just love when there's the element of unpredictability, and I am now curious. I don't want to see Liverpool stay in the dumps. I love Jurgen Klopp. I would love to see him eliminate the conversation of the Klopp curse from everyone's mind right now, and yes, reinvent the team. My only issue with that is, like, you're a month and a half into the Premier League. You just started the Champions League. There's no time to reinvent. You better hope your team's reinvented, and I don't know, go do what Ten Hag did and make your team run 20 kilometers before the next game. That seemed to work for United.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's, I guess, one last thing. So here's something I found, which I am not on the Klopp out train. I think Klopp has brought a lot of sustainability to the team that Liverpool haven't had for a long time. I think Liverpool fans seem to be forgetting where every single year they were just competing for 4th place in the Premier League. I know before that they were winning and everything, but he's won you a league, he's won a Champions League. So this is what it says. It's like 800 million spent, 1 Premier League in 8 years, 1 Champions League in 8 years, 1 FA Cup in 8 years. Enough is enough. Klopp out. I just completely disagree, and I understand the frustration of knowing the quality that's in that team. And yeah, they should be winning, but I don't think you can put this on Klopp. I think it's been a tough situation so far this season with the injuries. They do need to be better. There's no doubt in that. And I think Klopp is the guy to be able to turn it around. I don't think they shouldn't react harshly with what's kind of been happening.
I totally agree. And I'm over, a team having a few bad losses and everyone saying Gerrard out, Klopp out, Tuchel out. It's too drastic. And again, put some respect on Klopp's name. Look what he's done for this team. And at the end of the day, stop with the injuries, narrative. It's obviously important. Depth is very important, what Liam spoke to. But at the same time, they still have very good players on the pitch. They have one of the best goalies. You got Mo Salah, you got Diaz, you got who am I missing? Van Dijk, who prior to this season, everyone was putting him in the conversation as one of the greatest center backs of all time. Trent Alexander-Arnold. There's just so many players on this team that they had last season who are still playing that at some point you can't just put it solely on Klopp, because Klopp can't put boots on and go and play himself, right? You got to put accountability on the players, and there's just something off about the way this team is playing. And I mean, I don't want to say that I told you so, but I think it's Sadio Mane. I think Sadio Mane was way more important to this team than anyone even freaking knew. So that's that. There's one thing I want to say about Simeone on Napoli. Because he scored. Yeah, right? Listen to this, guys. When Giovanni Simeone was 13, he got a UCL logo tattooed on his arm, much to the anger and dismay of his parents. His excuse? Promising that he would kiss it when he scores in the competition. Tonight versus Liverpool, on his UCL debut, he scored against Liverpool and kissed the tattoo.
I saw that. That's pretty cool. If I was a parent, I would also be very upset if my 13-year-old got a tattoo. But it's cool that he was able to do that. Hopefully he doesn't inspire too many people.
13 years old, my dad would have kicked my ass out of the house 100%, growing up in a very traditional Polish household. But perspective, you feel like he's probably had to have manifested that moment, and his parents, I'm sure, are really proud.